The Iranians decided to do what they did last night. What it signals to me, Greg, is that there may be two people in the driver's seat here, us and them. When you want to end a war, you have to have the other side wanting to end it as well. Two, we have replaced the regime in Iran. The problem is, I think we replace it with a more hardline regime than there was before. We clearly have decimated a lot of their military capabilities, but we have not decimated it all.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Grab a seat for this one, because it got uncomfortable fast. A cable news panel sits down to talk about the collapse of the ceasefire with Iran, and instead of a united front, one of their own turns on the entire strategy. Harold Ford Jr., who actually supports the strike, says out loud that the regime we ended up with is harder than the one we started with, and that nobody can name what this war is even trying to accomplish. The response from the rest of the table? A joke about being bored. And it only gets stranger from there. Once bridges and power plants start getting listed like items on a menu. Do yourself a favor and ride this one all the way through, because the most honest moment in the whole clip lands right at the finish, from the last person you'd expect it from. Also, I always love seeing how far this channel travels, so drop your city or country down in the comments. Wherever you're watching from, it's good to have you here. Alright, let's get into it.
The ceasefire with Iran ending abruptly last night after the terror regime launched a surprise attack on U.S. bases. U.S. Central Command says every missile was intercepted. President Trump telling Trey Yingst, quote, "We're going to beat the effing shiitakes out of them." Here's the prez.
We're going to be hitting them very hard because it's our turn to hit them. They know it's coming. They're asking us not to do it, but, they tried shooting it last night, so it's our turn. And we'll see if we get there with an agreement at some point, but we're going to hit them very hard.
Dana, is it just me, or is this becoming a sort of background noise? Like you're looking out your apartment window and there's these people playing pickleball, back and forth.
Annoying noise.
And I'm not saying I'm proud of it. I'm just saying, like, has this become mundane?
When you were reading that, I was like, we've heard this. I've had a deja vu moment. But
Yes.
Here, I think where we are and what the president is alluding to is that through the president, the United States is extending olive branches. And Iran wants to light the olive branch on fire. And Iran plans to prolong the pain. And the president has been super patient, but at some point, something's going to have to change.
Yeah.
And he has the power to change it.
No. Harold, this reminds me of a time a couple years ago. I got in a fight with a guy downtown. I had no idea he was a masochist. So I just kept beating the crap out of him, and he said more. I feel like that this is the situation with Iran. They just have a tolerance for pain. They don't mind it.
It could very well be that we have misjudged and miscalculated some of this. The president, after 12 days of attacks, which I wish we had never stopped, even as we were going through this month, we paused it for a long period of time with the memorandum of understanding. But the president, for 12 straight days, the American military launched attacks against Iran. The president then said, "I'm going to pause it because I think there's a chance we could find some agreement here. We want to find a way to get an off-ramp here." Then the Iranians decided to do what they did last night. What it signals to me, Greg, is that there may be two people in the driver's seat here, us and them. When you want to end a war, you have to have the other side wanting to end it as well. Two, we have replaced the regime in Iran. The problem is, I think we replace it with a more hardline regime than there was before. We clearly have decimated a lot of their military capabilities, but we have not decimated it all.
A multiple choice of objectives. That phrase should have ended the conversation. Harold Ford Jr. just described a war with no defined victory condition, out loud, on national television, and the table nodded and moved to the next block. Open the strait, stop a weapon, stop the missiles. 3 completely different missions, 3 completely different price tags, 3 completely different exit doors. Harold said this: "We don't know which one is the priority. If the people being briefed cannot tell you what the mission is, what exactly are those pilots being sent up for? And here is what people do not realize. An objective is not paperwork. The objective is the thing that tells you when to stop. Without one, there is no finish line. There is only the next round. That is not a strategy. That is a subscription." He says it twice. Stop talking so much. He is asking for a speech, a plan, a reason. And the fact that someone who backs the strikes has to publicly beg for a basic explanation tells you the explanation was never coming. Now watch what happens the second he finishes. Jesse's answer is that he is bored of the war. That is the response. Not a rebuttal about the objectives. Not an answer about the endgame. A shot at the man's attention span. That is what I want you to catch. When somebody raises the hardest possible question about a war, and the reflex in the room is to mock him for asking it, the room does not have an answer. It has a mood, and moods are cheap when other people are the ones flying the missions.
So I would suggest these two things. And I started off every time, like I start off when I suggest to the president, he can take our recommendations, he has it or not. Stop talking so much. Two, get us an objective that we can all rally around as a country. Give us a strategy around it, and then say you're going to execute the daylights out of it and give a speech to the country about it. Because right now we seem to have a multiple choice of objectives. Open the Straits of Hormuz. Ensure that they don't have a nuclear weapon. Ensure that they don't have the ability to launch ballistic missiles. And every day it's like we don't know which one is the priority. Some days it's the Straits of Hormuz, some days it's the nuclear, some days it's the ballistic missiles. What we have to understand as a country is that this is not going to be easy. Democrats and Republicans in Congress, particularly Democrats who voted last week to end funding to Israel, I think that there are issues with Israeli policy, but it is foolish to not have our best ally there on the ground helping us. We need to talk to them. I think President Trump, I give him a lot of credit for the way he and Netanyahu have talked over the last several weeks. I think he's sharing with them our interests, the kind of stakes we have there as well. But we have to support our friends there. But, Mr. President, stop telling everybody what you're going to do and just do it. And then tell the American people, all of us who want to be supportive, what is our objective, what's the strategy, and then go execute and stop talking so much.
Jesse.
Well, you're bored of the war, obviously, so just talk to these people.
Well, not those 5 million.
But Iran is going on offense. That's changed. They opened up the second front with the Houthis, and now they launched a first strike attack on our base, which we knocked down, but it was during the Graham funeral, so it was symbolic, and the president has to respond strongly. These talks did collapse. They gave an offer to him from Oman. They say, we'll cut the strait in two. We'll have a north route, south route, split it 50-50. You know what Iran said? F you. We want the whole thing. So now we're back at war, and the president only has a few options.
It's our turn to hit them. That is it. That is the whole justification given for restarting a shooting war. Not an objective, not an endgame. Turn-taking. Like this is a schoolyard and somebody pushed first. Then Greg asks whether this has become mundane. He compares it to neighbors playing pickleball outside his window. Annoying noise. And here is what blows my mind. He is not wrong about the numbness. He is just proud of the wrong thing. Numbness is not a punchline. Numbness is exactly how a country sleepwalks into a decade-long commitment nobody signed up for. Dana says Iran wants to light the olive branch on fire. Convenient framing. 12 straight days of strikes came first, and somehow the story is that OUR patience is the thing being tested. And then Harold Ford Jr. says the part that actually matters. Harold said this: we replaced it with a more hardline regime than there was before. Stop. Sit with that. That is somebody who supports this policy, admitting on live television that the outcome is worse than the starting position. And you have to understand how old this pattern is. In 1953, American and British intelligence helped push out Iran's elected prime minister and installed a friendlier ruler in his place. That felt clean at the time. 26 years later, it produced the revolution that created the exact government being bombed today. Every hardliner in Tehran has been running on that grievance for 4 decades, and it was handed to them. So when someone says we swapped a regime and got something harder, that is not a surprise. That is the receipt. The experiment already ran once. It is running again. And the room is treating the result like weather.
One, ground assault on the islands, but then you're just going to get a hot mess right there with a lot of Marines. Or you do bridge and power plant day. He's worried about the astronomical reconstruction costs and taking all the energy offline and the civilian situation. Also looking at finishing off the 20% of the targets that we left after Operation Epic Fury and decapitation strikes. Is that going to change the dynamic at the negotiating table? I don't know. The economic advisors love patience. They want this blockade and the sanctions to stick it to them because they don't think they can last. These guys are greedy. They're not a bunch of savages in caves like the Taliban roasting goat over a bonfire. These guys have like $20 million estates in London, all right? So that could hurt. But the president has to do something to change the dynamic because what they're trying to do, jack up the price of energy, so the Fed has to raise rates and it slams the brakes on the U.S. economy.
Emily, what say you?
Nailed it. Just 2 things. I was thinking about the relationships with the Gulf allies and that when things start hitting the fan, they gravitate toward us for security. They want Iranian deterrence. They want stability. They want economic flourishing. And they don't really want to be involved. And they're still relying on us for that safety. That is something that China cannot replace. Jackie asked the president today about the rumors that China supplied 400, whatever it was, rocket launchers or whatever to Iran. He was like, if that's what's happening, that's going to change things. And there's a lot of questions people had. You mentioned this earlier about military readiness. Are we wearing ourselves thin? Are we able to sustain this and also sufficiently deter China? These are questions that the administration maintains. The answer to is a resounding yes. But these questions remain. And I think at the end of the day, we're testing China's limitations, but we're also testing our own on the global stage.
The civilian situation. 3 words dropped into a list somewhere between reconstruction costs and taking the energy grid offline. Bridges and power plants laid out like menu items. And what gets me is the order. Money first, electricity second, people third. Let me break down why that matters. Because a power plant is not a military base. A power plant is a ventilator. It is a water pump. It is insulin sitting in a refrigerator in the middle of summer. Take the grid down in a country of 90 million. And the ones who suffer first are not the men who made any of these decisions. They are kids and grandparents who never got a vote in Tehran either. Then comes the line about savages in caves roasting goat over a bonfire. Listen to how that worked. It is a joke, sure, but its job is to sort human beings into categories. The ones with London estates who can be pressured, and the ones apparently beneath the effort of talking to at all. Once a population becomes a punchline, whatever happens to them stops registering. That is not analysis. That is anesthesia. And then Emily asks the only fully honest question in the whole segment. Emily said this: are we wearing ourselves thin? Can this be sustained while still deterring a far bigger competitor on the other side of the map? And she follows it with something I genuinely respect. She said these questions remain. The official answer is yes, and she quietly refuses to just accept the yes. That is the entire thing in one beat. The confident answers come from people who never have to live with being wrong. The uncertainty comes from everybody actually paying attention. And look, nobody is asking you to admire the government in Tehran. I am asking a simpler question. What is this FOR? Not one person at that table could tell you. Not the host, not the panel, not the soundbite that opened the show. A war with a rotating objective, a bored audience, and civilian infrastructure sitting on the target list as an afterthought is not strength, it is drift. And drift is how a country wakes up 10 years later wondering how it got there. We have done this before. We know the ending. The only variable is how long it takes to admit it. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.